layers. In this video you will know how to turn layers on and off, turn on the layer management tool, understand layers are useful for working on separate parts of a scene or even model, realise if a layer is off, the final render will not contain anything that was on that layer. So let's go have some fun with layers over in Blender. Okay, so now we're over in Blender. Take a look at the 3D editor header toolbar. So down here we have 20 squares. How cool is that? That will actually turn on and off certain layers. And if you use the number keys across the top of the keyboard, providing you don't have number pad emulation turned on, you'll also notice if you glance down at the bottom of the screen here, when you press 1, it's on layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc, etc, and it goes all the way to 0. Now, if we want to place something on a particular layer, we simply select that layer, and let's just add, I don't know, a torus, so that we've got a donut floating in the sky on layer 3. You can also see it has a little orange blob on it when it's got a mesh object on it. So if I add, I don't know, a plane here and just scale that up, and we've got two separate layers now, layer 1 and 3. Now that wouldn't make sense, so if we went over to layer 3 and selected our object, we can move it to another layer. So you can move any object to another layer simply by going to Object, and at the top of this drop down, or drop up in this case, we have Move to Layer, and we can see the shortcut key is M, and that is it when you're in object mode. So when we click on that, we get the same thing that we can see down the bottom here. So when we press M, Move to Layer, and I'm going to move that to layer 2. There we go, and if we click on layer 2, we shall see our donut again. Brilliant. Now if you want more than one layer turned on at once, you simply hold down Shift as you click on those layers. You can also just drag across the layers, and it will also enable or disable those particular layers. Now just to demonstrate, if I select layer 3 and go and render the image, it renders absolutely nothing. If I hop back to the 3D view and turn on our torus and render that, we end up with the torus in the scene but no ground plane. But if I have both turned on and go to render image, it will render both of them. So it is very important that what you want to appear in your final render or animation, the layers are actually turned on. Now that has a great benefit, of course, that things that we're working on or other bits and bobs that are used to create our scene can be shoved to a different layer that's not going to be visible all of the time with the main scene. So one final thing, it would be really nice to name these layers, and we can do that with the layer management tool, which is not on by default. So apologies, we're going to go back, I forgot about this add-on, we need to go back to File and go to the User Preferences and turn on one called Layer Management. It's actually quite high up the list because it's under the 3D view Layer Management. If I put a tick in that box, and I'm going to save my user settings, it's going to be in the tool shelf. It used to exist over in the properties panel, but it doesn't anymore. It lives in the tool shelf. So I'm going to bring this tool shelf out so it takes up a third of my screen. And further down, we've got the Layers tab, and we have two drop downs, Layer Management and Layer Groups. And obviously layer groups is how you group layers together. Okay, so on here we've got layer 001, and we can call that one, for the moment, I'm going to call it plain, and I'm going to call this one donut, why not? So we've got plain and donut. Now we can lock the layers. Over on the left here we've got a couple of options. Now this padlock you would think would lock the layer, but it doesn't. What it does is it prevents you selecting the objects on that layer, so it locks the objects on that layer. And we can see that the symbol, the little arrow symbol here, has gone greyed out, and if you cast your eyes over to the outliner, it's also made them unselectable over here too. And if we click those off, we see they all come back again. You can also do a bit of moving if you want to move things between layers in here. So with the torus selected, we can click on this little dot here on the plane one, and it will actually move the torus to the plane. Now it's not obvious that it's happened until you actually turn off the first layer and you see that all the torus has disappeared. So with the torus still selected, we can click this next one down, and there we go, it's gone orange. And that simply shows you, when you've got an object selected, this little orange blob shows you which layer that active object is on. So we can see down here the orange blob, and here in the layer management tool that we've got the plane selected, and therefore it's the orange blob in the first layer because that's where the plane lives. If we right click on our torus here, or our donut, we get the second orange. If we select the lamp in our scene, well, that exists as an object on the first layer. So it's a good way, when you've got lots of things displayed, simply eyeballing which layer it's actually on. So a couple of ideas for you with layers. You could put all your lighting on a certain layer. You could put all of certain things. So in this instance, I think we're going to have a rabbit on one layer, we're going to have grass on another layer, and a tree on another layer. And perhaps if you guys decide to make your scene a little more involved, a little more detailed, then you can use multiple layers in order to do that. Okay guys, it's challenge time. I'd like you to set up 3 layers. Now name the layers rabbit, grass and tree respectively, and put some placeholders on each layer representing the rabbit, the grass and tree. Just use some primitives for the moment, don't go overboard, these are just placeholders so that I know that you understand how the layers are working. So then try switching between the layers and finally leaving all 3 on. So pause the video now and give that a go. Okay guys, welcome back. Let's get 3 layers named rabbit, grass and tree set up, and a couple of placeholders set on them. So straight back over into Blender. Well, I don't like a donut, so I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, now the donut has gone, let's name our first layer rabbit. Oh, I've not spelled rabbit correctly, that's a great start. And then we've got grass. And then the final layer here will be tree. And we may need more layers later depending on what we get up to. But for the moment, those 3 are great. So let's, on our rabbit, so we've got the first layer here. Well, I'm actually going to do camera and lighting. I'm going to pop that on lighting. There we go. I'm going to pop my camera, so I'm going to click on my camera over here, and I'm going to move it to the 4th layer. I'm going to also select the lamp and move that to the 4th layer. So that's those items moved off of layer 1. And then we need, so we've got this ground plane here, and we'll call it grass for the moment, so we can set that up there. And we want that on the grass plane. So with that selected, I'm just going to click this little circle here. Rabbit, okay, so turn everything else off. Our rabbit, to begin with, well, we'll just put a cube in the scene to represent the rabbit. Okay, and then finally a tree. Well, a tree's kind of cylindrical, so we will make a cylinder. Now, how about a cone? It can be a Christmas tree. How about that? Okay, so let's just undo that. I want it moved in the Z-axis by just 1. There we go. And let's place that over here. Let's go and just test the render, see how that looks. I think the camera is facing in a completely separate direction. Let's turn on all of the layers so we can see what's going on. In fact, yeah, the camera's looking that way, so I'll move it over there. So let's render that image, see what it looks like. We've got our rabbit and tree behind. Perfect, that looks great. And we've got all of our layers enabled. So let's go back to the 3D view. Spin round here, we've got all of our layers enabled. Let's just play turning them on off so we can work on the grass, we can work on the rabbit, we can work on the lighting if we wanted to do that, and we can work on the tree. Brilliant, so we've got all of those things there. I'm going to turn them all back on, and that's brilliant. How did you guys get on? Did you manage to set up your scene with all of the various components? Have you got any extra ideas about how you're going to use layers? Please share them in the discussions, and I will see you guys in the next lecture.